We're here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, in Southeast Asia. For all you geographically challenged individuals, I'm going to have you Google that. Malaysia, Southeast Asia. Here in Kuala Lumpur, the capital. These towers behind me are not lying, the Petronas Towers, and I'm here with Dr. Jon Wilson, professor of branding. But when you Google halal branding, Dr. Jon Wilson comes up. Dr. Jon Wilson is halal branding. I met this guy a few years ago. We've met all over the world. Actually, be a good first question. We've met in Dubai, we hung out in Bangkok, Europe, and now here in Kuala Lumpur. And this is a guy that I came up to. I first met him in Dubai. Yeah. And he had this big old hair going on. He had this really cool tie. You got to Google like how he dresses. It's pretty cool. drjohnwilson.com. drjohnwilson.com. And I saw him from afar. He was surrounded by all these people that were like looking up at him. And I said, hey, anyone with hair like that and a tie like that, I got to introduce myself to. My name is Muhammad Heraldez. We started laughing. Quick minute, but I had to let him go because he just had all these people around me. But with that in mind, you're an individual, you're a professor that deals a lot with brands. You deal a lot with global companies. You deal with individuals who are very worldly in their travels and in their pursuits. And you're a person that has to understand all these different cultures. So with that in mind, and everyone using the word global now, like the global Islamic economy and global business, what does the word global mean to you?
That's a good question. And it's a question that I asked myself a few years ago because I thought, am I really global? Like, what does that actually mean? Because I think I remember telling you one time, I went to Kazakhstan in 1999, and prior
you
to
see how he nonchalantly he just said Kazakhstan, like he's trying. Oh yeah, in Kazakhstan, you know, like
But you know, prior to getting invited to Kazakhstan, I had never heard of this place.
So where's Kazakhstan for those like myself that may not know where it's at?
Central Asia.
Got it. Okay.
Now, when I started to read up about the history of Kazakhstan, right down to Almaty being the father of the apple, that all apples came from Kazakhstan in Almaty, that was kind of like, it blew my mind. But then I also felt a bit embarrassed because then I thought...
Wait, why were you there in Kazakhstan again?
Oh, I was on tour with a band. That's another thing. I don't really want to talk about it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Got my work hat on.
Okay, go ahead.
But the thing was, I felt kind of bad because I realized that I wasn't as global as I thought. And one of the things about having...
And that's pretty, I mean, someone living in London to say I'm not global when, what? As we were talking with, I was with Mohammed Langston, and we went over that stat of 70% of British people have a passport. To say that, you know, I'm not global is pretty interesting.
It is interesting when you think as well that, like, now as a professor, then I teach 140 nationalities.
Wow, okay.
In the classroom, right? You know, it is a melting pot. English is the business language of the world, so I'm blessed, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also cursed because it means that you can have blind spots. There are parts of the world that many people do not know about because they've not been forced to know about them. And I was forced by going to Kazakhstan out of politeness, out of kind of a sense of, you know, self-worth to want to know what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I asked myself this question after the trip: how global am I? And then I developed it into kind of an exercise in the classroom for MBAs, professional training courses, so that people could start to think for themselves, how global are they? And the important thing is, it's not a yes or no answer. It's the journey and the process by which you think about these things, and you basically set yourself a to-do list to get yourself more global. And then I further expanded it when I did my PhD in global branding. I asked people, the professionals, the same question, but the same things always come up.
So, but why would someone, what's the importance of being global?
How can you credibly do business
Got it. Okay.
if you don't know what a significant portion of the world is up to?
Sure.
So, for example, you spoke about halal branding. That's a quarter of the world's population. Yet I am surprised or horrified or whatever that I go to companies and they say, tell me some more about Muslims or the Muslim market. And then when you say that Indonesia, for example, is 17,500 islands, is over 600 tribes, is
250 million people.
and more. And this is a revelation. This is top line stuff. This should not be a revelation. My life shouldn't be made so easy. So I drilled down to these questions, and then I would ask people some really simple ones. First out, work out how many people are there in the world. Several billion. You know the facts. Check Wikipedia. Next thing, what countries have you been to? And then look at the population numbers to see what percentage of the world you've actually covered. So if you've been to China and India, that's great. That's over 2 billion.
Yeah,
right? 2.5 billion. So you've won the global game, right? Because you know, for my students that have been to India and China, then they tick the box much further than if you've been to England, which is like 50 million or something like that. The UK, like 60 million, a little bit more. So try that game. Go around and see how many countries you've been to and match up the population numbers.
Okay, well, you're talking about like you being an educator.
Yeah.
Talking about global business. What do you think is the future of business education then?
Before I come to that, I want to kind of, there are a few more questions. I mean, I'll just run through them quickly because this exercise takes like an hour or something. But like, ask yourself, how many languages do you speak? And match that up to population figures.
Very true.
And then think about how many times you've been to those countries. So you might have been to China, you might have gone to Shanghai.
Yeah.
But does that mean that because you've gone to Shanghai, you know about the other tribes in China?
Yeah.
The other regions? You've been
The other 800 million people.
Well, this is it, right?
Yeah.
So then, when you start to think, I mean, what are the top 3 languages on Twitter? I think that they are English, Japanese, and Arabic. So, I'm going to ask you, these people that are experts in Twitter, can you speak Japanese? Squishy. Can you speak Arabic?
قليلا.
Yeah. So, how can you hit your numbers or your targets if you can't even do the basics, the kind of the ABCs of have you been to these regions? Can you speak the languages of significant populations in the world? And what does your workforce look like? Is it diverse? What does your network look like? Who are your friends? You know, there are plenty of people that would then say, okay, they win the global game, right? They've been to the countries, they know 1 or 2 languages, but they are just not plugged in. You see, I mean, like in my street, in my neighborhood, there are mixed race families, there are couples, there are languages, there are dialects. That to me is a good pointer that you're plugged into being global. But if you are in a network of colonial, that just globetrot, and then you only eat McDonald's, but you never go to a mamak around the corner or whatever, then you're not going to hit it. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to say, which is I love Malaysia. And one of the reasons is that as part of this kind of global game, I was watching the news one time, and I saw this piece on Malaysia, it's like maybe like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, and I thought, I've never been there. I know about the place, I've had friends from Malaysia. And when I did the stats, I was like, this is an emerging market, and this was exciting. And I thought, how could I do business if I've not been to the first question people ask you, if you said that you care about regions, have you been there?
True.
Right, if you can't tick that box, then how can you kind of sell products in that market? So my first trip to Malaysia was a holiday with my wife. We went on holiday, went to Malaysia, had a tie in my suitcase and some business cards, right? And hustled a little bit, but the second trip was for business. The second trip I didn't have to pay for. Every other trip after that has been for work, and I must have been, I don't know, I've lost count.
I just want to keep listening to you speak because of the British. Just like when I'm in Britain, like the people there just keep talking, you know, because they want to hear the American accent. I don't know. I'm hearing you speak, and I just want to keep hearing you talk. But look, as an educator, what do you think then is the future of global business, business education? What do you think is the future of all that?
Okay, you know, I preface it by saying I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the challenges that business schools face because students are paying a lot of money. Right?
Very true.
And I have a
college debt, university debt in America.
I have a duty of care to deliver top quality service. So one of the things that I would say to my colleagues and staff in that is that, you know, if we are not giving people something that they can't already get from YouTube or Wikipedia or online resources, then why are people wasting their money coming to university? Now, the challenge for a business school is that if you are doing business, are you preparing people for business? Some are very good at that, right? And they're more vocational. Others are strictly academic. But even I think that the future of an academic business school is going to be tough because if you've not got access to data, if you're not plugged into Booking.com, Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of these people that are crunching huge numbers, some of these papers that you see where they do a survey to 200 people, they do some structural equation modeling, something like that, and then it takes 2 years to publish, forget it. So one of the things I'd like to say is that I think that the role of professors in the future should be one which is more aligned with, you know, being like a recruitment consultant. They need to be in the center of the action. a foot in academia. You need to be able to do the long game of reading all the books, telling people what's going on over the long term.
Yeah.
But in the short term, having relationships where, like, I can pick up the phone to one or two companies and I can say, I know this person, I've sat with them for like 3 years, and I know I can tell you how they're funny, how they work, what sort of teams like to work in. How about offering them an internship, or how about giving them a chance for an interview? Currently, I'm able to do that for, the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah.
If a business school is going to be successful, there should be a system in place where a business school can do that for the entire class. So rather than just my top 20 students, 100 students I could do that for. That's when business schools are going to go places, because they're going to attract better talent, they're going to get good links with industry, and it works. But currently there is still an academic and practitioner divide. And to be fair, also, universities don't quite know how to reward the entrepreneurial or commercially minded professors that kind of go out there and do the hard yards.
So, entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Another key buzzword. And you've seen this space and the space of entrepreneurship, and probably the word branding. These are two words that I hear everywhere, see everywhere. People talk about it all the time. I'm more in the space of entrepreneurship, but you're the branding guy. So many people talk about branding, how they're in branding, they do branding, I do branding, ask me and I can consult with branding, but they don't have any formal education in it. How do people, first off, arrive to this, and I can say this as an outsider, to this delusionary state that they can be some branding guru when they haven't studied it and figured it out? Because I know there's academic rigor, there's data mining, there's data statistics, there's methodologies. How do you take that? Because I have my feel on entrepreneurship. How do you feel about everyone throwing the word branding everywhere?
It's all good. It's all good, but it reminds me of the music industry, and being a former musician, I've played in orchestras and I've played in rock bands, and I've even rapped once upon a time on Grand Theft Auto or whatever, under the pseudonym Robert De Niro. But that's another story. But the thing is this, right? If back in the day, saying you were in a band was something cool, right? And whether you had formal or informal education, it didn't really matter, right? But it was out there, you were out there, you raised your hand and you were doing it. And I think business is kind of like that now, where it's cool and sexy to say, I'm an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Or I do branding. The key question is, what route do you want to go? Right? If you want track record as an entrepreneur or as a branding person, they're going to say, show me what you've done, right?
Yeah, entrepreneurship, that's where you just, you make it out of nothing.
Right.
But branding, it's a degree, and it's not even a degree. People get degrees in entrepreneurship, which is like really funny to me, but branding, it's not like entrepreneurship. It's not something you figure out. You can, but in terms of the excellence, the focus, the rigor that's put into it, and it being used everywhere, that's what I want to ask you. I know you're saying it's all good.
Yeah. So I guess branding is kind of like jazz improvisation. Right? You've got to be a serious musician in order to be able to start to improvise and do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And that means it's a high bar. I mean, for me, I spent my own money to go and do a PhD in branding when people were saying, oh, you can just do branding, right? But then I had to read 1,000 articles, write 196,000 words, spend 3 years of my life doing this thing just to be able to say, I get branding, right?
Got it.
And then that ticks one box. Then you've got to kind of work with companies day in, day out.
Let me get it to something that is really important. I think for a lot of people on Instagram, social media. Let's just cut straight to the chase. What do you think about personal branding? Any tips on that? Because people don't think that branding can actually be towards a person. But I know better. But you're the expert. So any tips? Any thoughts?
Okay, so I would say there are a couple of things. One thing that I believe now is that there's basically one way to do branding. By that, what I mean is, once upon a time, there's the dude that would say he was a specialist in corporate branding, and there's a different set of theories, or there's FMCG branding, or there's professional services branding, or whatever. And I actually think now that there is a way of doing branding. I developed a toolkit, and it works regardless of what sector you're in, because there's just a set of principles. I got it from studying Aristotle, right? He had these 10 categories that he would look at things and whatever. But you can read about that on my PhD. But the thing is, then, branding,
my little PhD,
my player haters degree, right? But the thing that I would say then is that there's a convergence now. There is a way to do branding, And in some respects, that means ripping up all previous rule books, because what works for one company might not work for you. But when we look at personal branding, there are a ton of articles on it. And everyone now is seeing themselves as a brand and all this kind of stuff, which is interesting.
Okay.
Because once upon a time, the idea that you go on LinkedIn and you would have anyone below CEO or you know, celebrity or whatever calling themselves a brand would be crazy. I mean, I remember people saying to me, "You're a brand," several years ago, and I thought that's ridiculous. But they said, because of your hair. I was like, yeah, hair does not make a brand. My answer back then was like, brands are supposed to help you make money. I don't think my hair helps me to make money, right?
Yeah.
I don't think my hair.
I think it might actually. Well, but anyways, okay.
I don't think it's helped me get a promotion.
Okay.
But the thing that I would impress then is about personal branding. If you are not doing something which conforms with the laws of branding, which basically means that activity that you're doing is going to increase your net worth, your value, your profitability, your standout, then it's not personal branding. Some people think that just by taking a selfie and putting it online or having a domain name, that's personal branding. For me, personal branding is, well, you without the brand, you're paid 20,000. You with the personal brand, oh, hello, now you're being paid 60,000, right? That's how brand theory works. Now, once you establish that and you accept that fact, then it becomes fairly straightforward. You've got to follow the same rules. You've got to invest time in building your brand. That means, you know, bringing in advertising, public relations, personal selling, sales promotions, PR, all of these sorts of things.
But let me venture to say something. That would it be fair to say, I feel, that everyone has a brand? Whether it's managed correctly or developed correctly is another conversation. But wouldn't you say, okay, he's the guy, I just started this with saying the guy that I met with the tie, the hair, the height, that was a part of your brand. Whether you were cultivating that or having that evolve, wouldn't you say that's a personal brand?
The potential to be a brand. What you've got is a name, an identity, and a shape and a form, right?
Okay.
You know how I look, you know how I rock, you know my name, right? You then have to transform that into a brand identity, brand image, brand form, brand style, brand strategy. So that doesn't just mean putting brand at the front of whatever it is you do, right? It's like if I spoke about entrepreneurship and someone says, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, because you sell some chicken wings on the street corner after Friday prayer? Not necessarily, right? Potential to be an entrepreneur, perhaps. So I think that the thing is, there is an extra level of rigor where you are strategically doing activities and you can demonstrate that if it's personal branding theory, do I spend 2 hours a day on Instagram or do I spend 2 hours a day making sales calls? Those are brand decisions. At the minute, some people are running around like headless chickens. They don't know when they post the image. They just do everything, and that's not brand strategy. And would they be confident that if someone picked up the phone to them and said, like, you know, do I know about your brand? How much do I charge? Could they charge a premium? Now, having said all of that, the future is personal branding, because I think, you know, look on LinkedIn and you'll see that is the stomping ground and the potential for people to develop into personal brands, because with so much job rotation, the thing that sticks with you is your name.
True.
Right? True. So you're going to develop all of these badges.
And the different brands you're stringing along with you, which are the companies and
so
organizations.
So your brand, eventually, if you let it, can trump the brands that you used to rock with. So once upon a time, it was like, here's my business card, it's got this logo on it, therefore I'm worth something, right? The future is going to be people that actually if you haven't already done it, buy your own name. Buy a domain name, have a website, because that name and that identity...
Buy your domain name. Buyyourname.com if you still can. Someone holding it hostage for $10,000, but if you can, try to buy it.
Because then people can track you.
Very
because
true.
Now you're moving with such frequency. If a job isn't for life, you're moving every 3 years or whatever.
I mean, I always say you are what Google says you are.
Yeah.
So you need to at least own your name if you can. Hopefully you don't have the name Tom Smith or something like that. But that's a good
I
point.
bought my daughters, like, when my daughters were born, one of the first things I did, apart from get the cigars out, right, was buy their names, buy their domain names.
Interesting. Okay, so people think of you, they think branding, but they think of the word before that, right? You're in the space, I mean, you're pretty much the 800-pound gorilla of halal branding, of the halal space. What is halal? How would you define halal? How do you look at halal? Like, tell me what you think halal is, where it's going. Just give me your thoughts on halal.
Okay, there is great potential in this market. it's incredibly nuanced and complicated, and I think people underestimate that. And so you've got these different camps. What I try to do is try to feed all of these camps and kind of bring them together, because I think there are probably few people that I've been in DNA lab testing facilities in Tokyo, I've sat with halal certifiers, I've sat with Islamic scholars, I've even gone into the villages of Malaysia and seen animals killed in the villages. I've gone from farm to fork to try and understand what's going on.
Oh, you want to understand the whole chain.
The whole chain. And then, it's kind of more, but it's more than meat and money. Like halal used to be associated with meat,
True.
and Islamic finance, halal finance, whatever. But it's more than that. We've got fashion now, we've got tourism, we've got all of these things coming up. It's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff.
The mistakes that people make are, you put a halal logo or certificate on your product and it will sell itself. No, because people still need to know that the product is good and all those other things.
Absolutely.
That it's a technical field, so that if you've got all the ingredients in there and they've all been certified, that makes it halal.
Yeah.
Halal is something which has got a very spiritual component. So if you don't know the provenance, if you don't know the history of the business people, if you don't know how they treat their workers, all of these things, these feed into halal. Because for me, I wrote a paper in like 2010 where I said that halal can conform to brand theory, but it's bigger than that because it's not in our hands. The basic principle of halal is everything is halal or permissible unless stated otherwise. So then, this is why you have these debates where people say, so if everything is halal, apart from a minority of things, why do we brand the majority of things?
Yeah.
Good question. That was what people thought for many years. But then when you think about traceability, food contamination, supply chains, going across different territories, it makes perfect sense to know what farm was this from, how old is this product, where did it come from?
Wow.
And so we're going to see Bitcoin taking a big part in this, and we're going to see the full supply chain audited. My vision would be, I would love to see a situation where someone picks up their smartphone and they can run it over like a box of frozen food or whatever, and they say it came from this place.
Entrepreneurial idea right here.
Right
go ahead, keep going.
But you can
say you run it over the idea. I just cut you off because I'm trying to just tell everyone, take note of this entrepreneurial idea. You're saying that someone gets their phone. What did you say? Go ahead, finish.
They can roll it over the product and they can find out when that fish was taken out of the water, from where, which seaport, what date, what time.
Wow.
And they can check that. And for that, they will pay, because you know exactly what's going on, because there are so many things going into our food.
Yeah.
If halal can do that, halal is mainstream. At the minute,
I mean, they're not even doing that in the mainstream. So if
Right,
halal
so
was to do that,
this is an opportunity.
because in certain countries, this is right, that the phrase halal, the term halal, in certain countries, at least in Asia, is this correct that even the non-Muslims look at the word halal and go, ooh, we want that, right? Because it actually denotes some kind of, is that true, or am I?
Listen, even in New York, I was in New York this year, and you've got halal carts that have taken over hot dog carts. Because the halal cart will do shawarmas and hot dogs and pretzels and all sorts of things.
No, what I'm trying to say is that in certain countries, the brand halal actually is preferred by non-Muslims just because they know there's an extra layer of care. Is that true from the research? Or
there are people that behave in that way. That's absolutely correct. And even like in the UK, you'll see, like, there's some Rastafarians prefer halal because they know that we don't deal with pork. And that's part of their belief system as well. Or maybe it's the fact that your local butcher is more understanding and you're a bit short of cash, and he'll say, look, you can hook me up at come payday. There are lots of reasons why. Some of them are because there's an extra line of scrutiny. Others, it's because it's a network of people that have a conscience, right? And I think that sometimes people miss the point when it comes to halal. Now,
good point. No, that's a very
if it's going to go mainstream, and they're raising their hand saying that they're the guys that are really concerned with checking, and it's kind of the same as like if you've got a nut allergy or you're vegan or something.
Yeah, kosher.
There are no-go areas, right, where you can't deal with those things. That's why it can become trustworthy. But the biggest hurdle at the minute is like, fear. Now, the fear is when people link Islam with terrorism or halal with, they start saying, well, you're funding like ISIS and stuff like that, which isn't true. And that's why non-Muslim businesses sometimes are worried, or Muslim businesses are just worried about how they engage with non-Muslims. And I think part of my job then is that bridge building, where I focus on the branding, the PR aspects, because if you look at brands, brands are recession-proof, and brands can transcend national borders. So whilst your country might be at war with another country, well, that phone can still be used and consumed, that burger is still eaten, and it's not a paradox, it's not a contradiction, it's just the fact that brands in themselves have become national identities, and that's the thing that really fascinates me. That kind of brings all the way back to the beginning, which is why do you think about global branding? Why were you interested? What makes something global? You know, I think that the future, if it comes to social and economic change and people getting behind things, brands, from my research, are the things that make us human. They're a basic facet of human existence, because from the dawns of time, whether that's hieroglyphs or cave paintings or flags or samurai crests, that's brand theory. The thing that excites me is that, you know, when you reach a kind of a ceiling where I've read so many articles, and then it just becomes like sound bites or these buzzwords where it's globalization, millennial, Gen Z, Muslim millennial, you know, Gen Y,
Gen Z for
Gen
us
Z,
Americans.
Yeah, Gen Z, right?
Okay.
I'm kind of through with some of these presentations that talk about millennials are like this,
Gen
Z are like this. Some kind of grassroots on the street intel. What have you seen, like in Southeast Asia, that you've kind of, which has just jumped out?
Well, I have an issue with the whole phrasing of Gen Z and millennials, because I feel that it's more of a mind state, right? Because you could be 65 years old and think like a millennial. For example, the way when you look at how Gen Zs or millennials are described to me, they sound like hippies, right? I mean, you sort of categorize them as hippie. They're not really into owning stuff. They care for experiences, dropping tabs, Woodstock. It's these kinds. It's a mind state. It's not so much like a label as more of a mindset. So you could be 55 years old and be like a millennial.
Things that you've noticed, because you're an outsider, and so you've been
here in Southeast Asia.
You've come here and you stayed here for a decent amount of time. That things will pop out to you.
I really think globally, but I think it's like the in vogue thing. Entrepreneurship is just super in vogue, and everyone's trying to do it. And I'm sorry, but some of y'all are not cut for it. Some of you guys are not cut to be founders. Some of you are cut to be probably someone who joins early on and gets some equity, but to be a founder and to start a company, and it's not that easy. But it's weird because I fell into entrepreneurship. It's not that I was like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. It was, I want to solve a problem, hopefully bring value to people's lives because I know it'll solve my own problem. It wasn't something that I came out going, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And that's what I feel with here in Southeast Asia, because it is a burgeoning like economy, right? When you think of Indonesia, you think of Singapore, you think it's a lot of growth, and with that, people are, you know, having higher aspirations for themselves. But it's just to come out and say, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur." That's new to me.
Does the word mean the same here as it does across the pond?
So when people talk of the word entrepreneur, they seem to think of digital entrepreneurs, digital technology entrepreneurs. But you can be like you were mentioning about the guy who's selling hot dogs outside of the mosque on Friday prayers. That's a small business entrepreneur, or it's a self-employed entrepreneur. So there's different, like just how you specify and have these different classifications for branding. As someone who's in the space and who speaks about it, who lives it, there are different classifications for entrepreneur. You can own a franchise, right? You can own a Subway, a McDonald's. Yeah, it's not someone who started like Instagram or started, an Uber, digital technology entrepreneur, but you're a franchise entrepreneur. You're a small business entrepreneur. You're a self-employed entrepreneur, because a lot of entrepreneurs are actually self-employed, meaning that it's their blood, sweat, and tears that are making money currently, and they hope that their system eventually makes them money, and then you have investors whose money makes them money. But we've come to our time. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We're coming out. Petronas Tower is behind me. We're not lying. We're here. This ain't a green screen. Coming from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Check you guys out later. Next week, I'll come out with another vlog. Thanks so much, man.
Cool.